From 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome back. I'm Bethany Elsey with your top stories from the GB newsroom. Prince Harry has made his most damaging allegations yet against the royal family, including an accusation his brother, the now Prince of Wales, attacked him. Leaked extracts of his autobiography Spare, which is out next week, reveal claims that William grabbed Harry by the collar and pushed him to the floor during an argument about his marriage to Meghan. Copies of the book, which mistakenly went on sale in Spain, detail how the brothers allegedly begged their father not to marry the now Queen consort, Camilla. Buckingham Palace has refused to comment on the reports. The Labour leader has promised to take back control by devolving power from London to communities across the country. That's if his party wins the next general election. In his first speech of the new year, Sir Keir Starmer set out his plans to grant local councils new control over employment support, transport, energy and housing. A day after Rishi Sunak outlined his 5 promises, Sir Keir accused the Prime Minister of being in denial about the problems facing the country.
More promises, more platitudes, no ambition to take us forward, no sense of what the country needs. 13 years of nothing but sticking plaster politics. It's why every crisis hits Britain harder than our competitors. The only country in the G7 still poorer than it was before the pandemic.
The government is proposing new laws to guarantee fire, ambulance and rail workers provide a minimum level of service during strike action. Under the plans, unions could be sued if they don't supply adequate cover. A number of union bosses have criticised the proposals, but the Business Secretary Grant Shapps says the bill, which will be brought to Parliament in the coming weeks, is necessary for safety, especially within the NHS.
If, for example, you've got somebody who has a heart attack, maybe a stroke, the idea that there may not be an ambulance coming because there's a strike on, I think is unacceptable. We're not proposing to go the full hog. Other countries, parts of America, Canada, Australia, they have legislation which bans those blue lights entirely from going on strike. we're not proposing that. I think it's very reasonable what we're suggesting.
The Mexican military have arrested a son of the imprisoned drug kingpin, Joaquin Guzman, also known as El Chapo. Cartel leader Ovidio Guzman was captured during an operation that set off gunfights and roadblocks. The video posted online appears to show burning vehicles blocking roads in the Mexican city of Culiacan. The high-profile arrest comes just days before President Joe Biden's visit to the country. Drug trafficking is expected to be a top talking point for the leaders. You're up to date on TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News. Now it's time for Headliners.
Hello, I'm Andrew Doyle and welcome to Headliners, your first look at Friday's newspapers. Headliners is, of course, one of two newspaper review shows, and we're going to be diving into the headlines. This week on BBC Radio, it was claimed that there are no working comedians on GB News. So tonight I'm joined by greengrocer Leo Kearse and wind turbine technician Roger Monkhouse.
Does anybody want any bananas?
Very good. You're very good at your job, Leo. Yeah. Excellent
Dead birds from me, I suppose. The carcasses of all manner of wild birds.
So let's go straight into the front pages first. We're going to start with the Daily Mail, which runs with "Oh, spare us." The world is stunned by Prince Harry's litany of excruciating attacks on the family. The Telegraph has "Please don't marry Camilla." The Eye runs with "UK monarchy facing its worst crisis for 30 years. This is, of course, the theme that is covering all of the newspapers. The Daily Express has "Reconcile, but you sold your soul, Harry." And then we've got The Sun, which has "Prince Harry, I did coke and weed." I'd have been surprised if he didn't. The Daily Star has "Royal Rumble, put your dukes up." And those were your front pages, but let's take a closer look at the fine nuance that differentiates them. Okay, we're going to kick things off with the Daily Mail now. What's their take, Leo?
So the Daily Mail leads with, they've got the headline, "Oh, spare us," just showing the exasperation of everyone at the Daily Mail there. But it's got a picture of him when he was serving with the military in Afghanistan, and he declares in the book that he killed 25 Taliban fighters, 25 Afghan men. So it's nice to know that he doesn't just destroy royal families. He also goes abroad and destroys families there. I mean, that's going to make Christmas a sad time for many of those Afghan.
It absolutely would. And your sympathy with the Taliban is well known, of course. But do you not think that, war is a different scenario, isn't it? I mean, it's not like he's a serial killer and he's clocked up 25 victims, is it?
It's not quite the same as being a serial killer. But, I mean, I just think, for somebody to go to Afghanistan, kill 25 men, and then still be, revered by the left as this woke icon because he calls everyone racist and knows about intersectional feminism and has a therapist. It's ridiculous.
Yes.
I mean, he killed 25 men.
Roger, what do you feel about that? Are you going to be reading Spare, his new book, Spare? Will that be your...
I've done my damnedest to not get sucked into the circus of it all, but of course I've had to gen up on it for tonight, apart from anything else.
Yes, I'm sorry about that.
And it's almost unedifying, isn't it? I do find it all somewhat degrading. But the 25 Taliban deaths, it's like some psycho you get chatting to in a pub, isn't it? And then suddenly he'll unleash these grim facts.
Oh, yeah, well, it's almost like a meme. There was a meme about one guy on Twitter a couple of years ago where he was talking about, "I've got 20 confirmed kills, so don't mess with me on Twitter." That was basically the kind of...
It does seem frightfully indiscreet. I mean, of course it all is, but that particularly, is he not contravening some kind of implicit...
I think the army have spoken out against that.
Have they?
And also it's got to be embarrassing for the military that, he can then get apparently knocked to the ground by a civilian.
That's right. This is not a particularly impressive one.
This is true, though, isn't it? Like, soldiers generally don't talk about that kind of thing. It's considered vulgar, it's considered...
I don't know whether it's technically part of the... I don't know whether he's bound by the Official Secrets Act, but at the very least, it's shockingly and horrendously indiscreet.
Yeah. Absolutely incredible.
And as I say, so horrendously unedifying. It's very, very hard to see any kind of motive other than money.
It's weird, isn't it? I mean, Harry just comes across as worse and worse the more we learn about him. So, you know, I don't know what he's planning to do. Well, he's going to make a lot of money in this book, although apparently they have to sell 1.7 million copies in order to break even, because the publisher has invested so much into the book. They're not going to sell that many, are they?
Yeah, good luck. It's already on for half price. So
exactly.
Good luck with that.
Anyway, we're going to move on now to the next front cover. This is the Telegraph. Roger, what is the Telegraph? I mean, obviously, all of the papers are going with Prince Harry. But what is the Telegraph focused on?
Please don't marry Camilla, with a picture of them all looking extremely chunky. I presume that's in widescreen.
I think that's just the way it's been printed there.
Unless they put it on over Christmas. Yes, please don't marry Camilla. And this is rather poignant, of course. Both boys as bereaved sons of Diana, apparently... Once again, I feel so tawdry in repeating these stories, but apparently they both begged Charles not to marry Camilla, presumably on the grounds that, you know, he's the Prince of Wales. He could have had anyone.
I don't think they were saying that she was punching above her weight. So, I don't think that's what they meant.
Showing pictures of Playboy models. Look, Dad, you're going to be king. You could have one of these.
They could have had some sort of lottery in Wales. You could have done anyway. That's just.
I mean, their concern was that, in fact, they used the phrase "wicked stepmother." They were afraid that she was going to become a wicked stepmother.
Psychological archetype, isn't it?
Yes, Jungian.
Well, any stepmother is a wicked stepmother.
Well, but isn't this the case that all children effectively end up fearing or detesting the stepmother or stepfather, and vice versa? Apparently, most of the crimes, where there are crimes where a step-parent kills or attacks a child, it's always a stepchild.
Right,
You know,
right.
Well, there's all manner of psychological things at play, because, of course, the stepmother is inevitably jealous of the former wife.
Yes.
And hence all the fairy tales.
And
of course, these are archetypes, aren't
I think
they?
particularly in a case like this where the mother died, so, you know, then they become elevated to a perfect
and was the most celebrated, beautiful woman in the world.
Yeah, she kind of was pretty perfect when she was alive. So,
is this one of these anecdotes from the book that is going to make people warm to Harry? Because a lot of the others don't seem to, but maybe this one will.
Well, I think this is something we can all feel sympathy for Harry over. I mean, he did suffer a tragic loss when he was only, I think he was 12 years old.
And he had to go out in public.
Yeah.
And so back then, of course, the royal family was all about the stoicism, wasn't it? So
exactly. That loss of stoicism is so damaging, though, isn't it? You see, as a dispassionate, uncommitted royalist myself, I've always been fond of the institution, but I've never invested in the individuals that make up that institution. I mean, frankly, it's horrendous when any of them open their mouths beyond "hello, what do you do?" I mean, and anything beyond that is something
where are you from? I like it when they say "where are you from?"
Yeah, which they keep saying quite a lot. But you know, the Queen had it right, wasn't it? I mean, her whole thing was, "I'm not going to reveal." You know, we didn't really know what she felt about an awful lot of things, and that was better.
Yeah, and discretion was immaculate. And of course, when you let sunshine in, the magic evaporates.
And now we know everything about Harry, and we didn't want to know anything about Harry.
Yeah, now we like him less.
Yeah. Not good. Right, we'll move on to another front cover now, and this is The Sun. So their focus, Leo?
They say, this is a quote from Harry, it says, "I did coke and weed, because cocaine does make you urinate." So,
it does.
Hey-o. But, so, I mean, he was apparently a proper caner back in the day.
But didn't we know this already?
Yeah, we already knew it, but it's nice for him to confirm it. So before I just had, the stories from friends who are friends with his drug dealer. And now I've got it in his book.
But also, I remember all these front covers of the tabloids back in the day when him partying naked in LA with various women.
Yes,
so we knew he was a party hound.
Yeah.
So of course Coke was going to get involved. I mean, this is a revelation.
Back when he was fun. But I mean, I guess if you're in line to the throne and you're a sort of figurehead for the state, then you're not supposed to get off your face on cocaine.
I'm not so sure. I mean, Queen Victoria did buy heroin at Harrods back in the day.
I mean, that was acceptable back then.
It was.
They were allowed
totally
to
legal.
laudanum.
It was an opiate.
They put cocaine in Coca-Cola. That's why it's called Coca-Cola.
Exactly. Yeah. So we shouldn't judge them by modern standards. So you want us to judge Harry for his profligacy?
I do, although apparently he's moved on to mushrooms. I don't know if he says this in the book, but I've heard...
Are you just making that up?
No, I'm not. I've heard through the grapevine.
What kind of grapevine is this? Not happy about this. Roger, any thoughts about this? I mean, You're not surprised, are you, that as a young man...
No, of course not. He was, of course, a tearaway youth, wasn't he?
That's what the second prince is meant to be like.
And therefore rather charming. Yes, that's absolutely right. That's what the spur has licence to be and do.
Exactly.
But we don't want to know about it. That's the big deal.
And also, they're aristos. I mean, this is what aristos... I mean, they'll do a lot worse than that.
Yeah. As I say, I've never invested in the individual, and when they lose what is the essential magic, their sense of duty and stoicism and propriety, then you've got nothing left.
Yeah.
And then we've got this one. So we're going to the front cover of the Daily Star now. Obviously, they've gone for the more colourful aspect. Put your dukes up.
Yes, so
this is the fight, isn't it? This is a hilarious fight, which sounds like sounds like a real bitch slapping affair, doesn't it? It's very, very hard to take seriously. But apparently Harry was put onto the ground and then hilariously told his therapist, but didn't tell Meghan.
So my understanding is that they were having a fight about Meghan, and William threw him onto the dog bowl.
Apparently,
and the dog
broke.
Which is why you should always buy plastic dog bowls because they're posh. So it had to be ceramic or whatever.
Probably Ming.
Yeah, probably a Ming dog bowl. And then apparently some of the shards, when apparently he said that the injuries were visible, the dog bowl injuries.
Right.
Scratched his back.
Surely worse than anything he got in Afghanistan.
It's a shame she wasn't there, because I'd like to imagine her dancing around, screaming, "Leave it, Harry, he's not worth it."
That would have been amazing, but it didn't happen.
This is a bit pathetic. I mean, all brothers fight, so I think it's fairly standard for siblings to fight. Imagine if Liam Gallagher had come out and been like, Noel got me in a headlock and flushed my head in the toilet. You'd completely lose any respect for him.
It is.
And I've lost all respect for Harry.
But he had to phone his therapist. If I had to phone a therapist every time I fought with my brother, I mean, we couldn't afford it, for one thing. I suppose that this is how pampered these people are. But that's what they did, apparently. A therapist.
Yeah.
Does that reflect badly on his relationship with Meghan, the fact that he couldn't phone her? What do you think?
It reflects badly on the state of modern people.
OK.
But, I mean, I think Meghan would have just said, listen, Harry, just phone your therapist.
Yes. And then we're going to move on to the Eye, and the Eye, of course, well, they have the same story, but they've taken a slightly different angle, Leo?
Yeah, so they're saying the monarchy is facing its worst crisis for 30 years. So, because of the stuff that's coming out in the memoirs, there's real antipathy between Prince William and Prince Harry. Harry's described William as his arch nemesis, and obviously there's the claims of being physically attacked. So there's also the poor taste jokes. He says that they sort of coerced him into wearing a Nazi uniform.
I don't believe that for a second.
Oh man, like if somebody asks you, should I wear a Nazi uniform to this party? Nobody's going to say no.
Absolutely.
Everybody's going to say yes
course,
to see what happens. You know what I mean?
Well, look,
positive affirmation, isn't it? In
I went to an Hello party recently, and I knew enough.
Did you go?
I know I didn't dress as a Nazi because I knew to do that would be absolute suicide, wouldn't it?
GBNews.
Why on earth would you do it? So I don't believe he was an adult at the time. Maybe William suggested it as a joke, but it's his fault. It's his responsibility ultimately.
Yeah, and it shows how Harry's seeing everything through a prism of victimhood. So anything that he's done, anything that happens to him, he's the victim in everything. Even when he dresses up as a Nazi for a laugh, and it is a laugh, and we all preferred him when he was just having a laugh. I don't think he dressed up with any sort of... He wasn't seriously trying to, raise love or awareness or bring about the Fourth Reich or anything.
No, that was always overblown, wasn't it? It was a fancy dress party.
It was a fancy dress party. We've got a tradition in Britain. We've got a low and all that kind of stuff. We mock the Nazis.
Yeah. But how threatened is the monarchy by this? This is the question.
Well, how
damaging is this to the monarchy?
I mean, do you think it's something they can just brush aside? I mean, I believe there's another 3 books to come. Like, this is just the beginning of this.
All he's got is his former relationship with the monarchy.
Yeah,
that's all he's got. So, of course, that's the only thing he can monetise, and he has an expensive Californian lifestyle.
But and it's a dwindling resource as well.
He's still quite young. There isn't that much left to tell, is there? I mean,
surely not.
If he's doing 4 books, does this only go up to the age of 5 or something? No, it doesn't. It takes him up to now. So he's really going to be...
The monarchy has survived worse crises, of course. It survived the Russian Revolution. It survived the abdication crisis.
This is
you suspect that it will endure.
I think he thinks he's on a par with Edward VIII, and I think this is that Meghan is the equivalent of Wallis Simpson. It's not. It's nowhere near the kind of level of constitutional crisis. It's just not comparable.
Efficient institution would have had him lost in action in Afghanistan.
I always wondered if he was sent to Afghanistan for that to happen because of who his father might be.
Whether that was the hope. OK, well, anyway, that's it for our Prince Harry section, I promise. But join us after the break for Keir Starmer taking back the taking back control line, Putin's Christmas miracle. If he gives you perfume, I would chuck that. And MAGA Republicans rebelling against Trump. See you in 2.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons? I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, We're
on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners, your first look at Friday's newspapers with myself, agitator Andrew Doyle, lucky Leo Kearse and rampant Roger Monkhouse. And we're going to start this section with Friday's Guardian. Roger, where have I heard this line before?
This is Keir Starmer vowing to let communities take back control in Labour's first term. It's an extraordinary piece of political agility, isn't it?
What, nicking someone else's slogan?
Nicking the arch Brexit slogan.
Yeah.
He was, of course, the arch Islington Remainer who campaigned for a second referendum.
Yes, he did.
It's an outrageous act of chutzpah.
And is that why you think he's done it? To try and say,
Unquestionably. Peter Mandelson was on the radio earlier on today saying what a stroke of genius it was, and I suspect he might be right.
Well, if you've got Peter Mandelson's approval, he doesn't normally do appearances during the day because he's in his coffin. But what do you think about this, Leo? I mean, this is I mean, it is chutzpah, isn't it?
It is chutzpah and it is a slogan. I mean, Keir seems to be very good at making these sort of quite votable slogans. He says the right thing on immigration, the NHS, now taking back control. But will it actually translate into anything meaningful or substantive on the ground? And also, I mean, he's talking about communities taking back control. Devolution has been an absolute disaster.
It has.
Like in Scotland, it's just created this satellite state that's, that
and
sort
in
of
provincial
leeches.
England as well. It's proved unpopular and ineffective.
So English people hate the fact, they resent the fact that Scotland's got its own parliament that just leeches off them and hates so much, sends so much hate to Westminster. And also it means Scotland is now governed incredibly badly. We used to have good politicians. Scots used to run a lot of the UK. There was a lot of top Scots in the government, and now we don't have it because we've created this insular state.
There are some people who argue for an English Parliament, don't they, as well? But that's not what they're talking about here. They're talking about like moving power away from Westminster to local communities.
Yeah,
and of course, opposition leaders traditionally have always promised to devolve power.
Yeah.
Because they haven't yet got it, but actually historically they then tend to accrue power.
I mean, the argument is that it is good for democracy insofar as if you've got more control in your local area.
I'd be all for it, and I think you could argue that the local authorities have had power removed from them since, well, the 70s, perhaps, certainly under Thatcher.
Having worked in government, local government, I've got to say devolving power to local communities is a terrible idea, because local governments are always just completely inept.
Yeah.
Really,
And
at least
corrupt, often frightfully
very corrupt, and they don't have the oversight that Westminster does. So Westminster, at least, I mean, even though they seem terrible, it's the best you're going to get.
Well, also, local authorities are particularly captured by the woke ideology at the moment. They're the ones that are really pushing forward this sort of stuff with no scrutiny from above. So I don't know, giving more power to these people is a particularly sensible idea.
And also, of course, it tends to be power without responsibility, in that
exactly.
they're not tax raising, and consequently, just like the Scottish government, they don't get it in the neck for their spendthrift policy.
But again, how does this compare? Keir Starmer's statement, so he's going to take back control. How does this compare to Rishi Sunak's New Year statement? His 5 major goals. It all seems quite vague. I mean, he basically said, "I pledge to achieve the things that will happen anyway, even if I don't do anything."
We live in an age of political pygmies, tragically.
Rishi's pledges were the least ambitious, the least shooting for the stars pledges I've ever seen. He's like, I'm going to try not to kill you. I'm going to try not to make big holes in the road. It was all just.
Well, he also said, we're going to achieve all of these things, or we won't. We might not, we'll see. We'll see what happens. That was effectively what he said.
Keir Starmer was non-specific, of course. But why would he be? Because, of course, all you want at this stage is mood music.
Yeah.
I mean, it's falling into his lap, so why rock the boat?
Oh, he doesn't. He should just do a Biden and stay in a basement and not actually campaign.
Yes,
because he will win that way.
A bit tragically, though, he's so without charisma. He could be reading the Gettysburg Address and he'd still sound like a provincial deputy head.
Yes, although
raiding the Year 10 running in the corner. It's just his tone.
Yeah, but Rishi Sunak is hardly Peter Euston.
Oh, he's the head boy in the same provincial. Awful. PMQs is so dreary now.
OK, we're going to move on to Friday's Telegraph. Leo, surely your beloved leader hasn't overreached again.
So Nicola's proposed ban on conversion therapy would be unlawful, according to KC, formerly QC, but then the Queen died. So Aidan O'Neill, so he's a top lawyer. He was acting for a children's charity. So basically, SNP and the Greens in Scotland, they're proposing this a ban on conversion therapy. And this would apply to conversion therapy for sexuality, but also gender. And, we traditionally know of conversion therapy as sort of being electric shocks being administered to gay people, or being shown pornographic films or propaganda or whatever to try and, straighten them out. And it obviously doesn't work. But now, that's pretty much been outlawed. And, nobody really does it like that. There might be, the church prayer or something like that. But there isn't that brutal, ridiculous, awful, barbaric, medieval type of conversion therapy. So they're trying to, bring this law through based on the fact that, conversion therapy still happens. It's fixing a problem that doesn't really exist, but also it applies to gender identity. So this would mean that if a child turns to his parent and says, "Oh, Mummy, I think I'm a girl," they're a boy, and they say, "I think I'm a girl." Instead of being like, "That's nice, dear," and ignoring it, you've got to book in an appointment for that child's genitals to be removed.
Well, I mean, worse. So if a paediatric specialist, a gender specialist, were to sit down with the child and say, "OK, well, let's explore why you might have these feelings, where they might come from. Maybe it's to do with autism, maybe it's to do with internalised homophobia, as it often is." If they were to do that,
it's just a craze going through your school, like mullets and Tamagotchis.
Right. Well, if anyone were to have that explorative therapy, that would be banned. Yeah. So in other words, unless you affirm straight away, but by affirming straight away, you're effectively transitioning predominantly gay individuals. Yeah. So a ban on trans conversion therapy is actually a form of gay conversion therapy.
Exactly, yes.
Yes,
it's
perversely,
gay.
I see what you're saying entirely, absolutely.
So they don't really understand, I don't think they understand the issues. That's what I think is going on here.
Yeah, and it polices private, confidential, frank conversation, which is clearly going to be counterproductive.
There's also a problem, though, isn't there, with Scotland, as far as the way that the SNP have been able to railroad this through and openly dismiss the concerns of feminists. The feminists, Nicola Sturgeon said there is no merit to these feminists' arguments.
Yeah.
Not even attempting to talk about it. And the Greens have supported this, obviously. What can you do about this in
It's
Scotland?
surprising how little it split the SNP, frankly.
Well, there were some that
A couple of
resigned.
defects.
There were a couple of resignations, weren't there? But there just is no opposition to this kind of ideological nonsense. It just doesn't exist.
And also the SNP, to a large extent, sort of control the judiciary in Scotland. So the equivalent of the head of the CPS in Scotland is also the SNP's legal advisor. And that's obviously a role that should be split. It's split in England, and it's ridiculous. And also this proposed law would breach EU law, it would breach the UK's Human Rights Act of 1998. It would breach plenty of statute and precedent that's already exists, and it's a new law. And it's also, law should be easy to not break the law. Right. It should be natural to not break the law, and this would pretty much anything could be construed as a crime under.
But this puts us, the Scotland, on a direct collision course with Westminster, doesn't it? Because they've also talked their new gender recognition reforms. Also are basically saying that when the Human Rights Act talks about sex, it means gender identity. But that's not how it's applied in the UK as a whole. So there's going to be some sort of conflict at some point, isn't there? And I think Westminster can override them.
Westminster say they've got the power to block the gender reform bill, and they say they'd have the power to block this as well. But then that plays into Sturgeon's hands, because that's seen as the overbearing
Westminster stamping on her patch, and of course she's very good at playing that card.
Although the gender recognition reforms are hugely unpopular amongst Scottish people. I think something like 70% of Scottish adults oppose it. So she's just doing it anyway. She doesn't care. Because there's no competition. Terrible situation. Anyway, The Independent now. Roger, it seems that Putin's declared a ceasefire. So Ukraine should probably go straight on high alert.
This sounds like a cunning plan, doesn't it? Absolutely. I didn't honestly know this, but of course the Russian Orthodox Church uses the Julian calendar as opposed to our own superior and more modern Gregorian calendar. Consequently, apparently celebrates Christmas on January the 7th. And so Putin has apparently suggested a 48-hour ceasefire, which doesn't sound very plausible, or indeed viable or valid. I mean, clearly, it's something to ignore and is merely propaganda.
Of course. But where are we with this, with Ukraine at the moment, in terms of, do you think there is any hope at all? Putin's just going to keep going and going, isn't he?
I don't think he will. I mean, he's losing really quite badly and losing a lot of troops, and they mobilised a lot of troops. They lost hundreds in a single strike the other day.
They did, but they have a seemingly unlimited resource in terms of when it comes to recruiting troops and conscription.
And he's got nowhere to go, of course, as well. And the only opposition internally, as far as I understand it in the Kremlin at the moment, is from the nationalist right. So actually they're pushing him further down the same frightful road.
But eventually it'll reach breaking point and he'll have to go. And also, apparently he's ill. I mean, we've been hearing stories about him being about to die for a long time. I don't know if it's just wishful thinking, but yeah, he's very, very weakened. And also the weakness in Ukraine could lead the Soviet, Russian Federation states, the Stans, possibly even Belarus, although they seem to be very close at the moment, to break away from Russia and also, fight back against Russia, as we saw with Chechnya.
Right now, it's working quite well for NATO and the West, isn't it? Because, of course, Russia's completely bogged down in Ukraine, who are doing our fighting, which, of course, is sponsored by us and costs, but nonetheless, we
get to test out our new weapons.
That's right, which turn out to be quite good, and
better than the Russian
with
ones.
The energy crisis, and particularly the American liquid fuel industry is thriving at the moment because, of course, it's all being shipped to Europe. The price of energy's gone down, so on the whole, it's working very nicely for the West. You could suggest, perhaps, if you were of such a bent, that there is some level of conspiracy in perpetuating.
Well, let's not go down that rabbit hole for now. We're going to stick around with Friday's Telegraph now, and I thought MAGA Republicans were pro-Trump.
Well, this is the thing. Republican rebels have rejected Donald Trump's backing for Kevin McCarthy as the Speaker of the House.
Wow.
So the Republicans have got a slim 222 majority in the House of Representatives. That's very, very narrow. I think it's just possibly just one or a few people. And so I thought this would be maybe more centrist Republicans kicking back against Trump, as he's had some resistance because of his failures in the midterms and the rise of DeSantis, who's more centrist. But no, they're 20 ultra-conservative rebels.
Nicknamed the Taliban 20.
Nicknamed the Taliban 20. Not killed by Harry. This is,
not yet.
So, this is really interesting. So, and this means until they elect a speaker, the Senate can't do anything. It's just locked locked up. Some Republicans are actually suggesting a unity candidate instead of a Republican.
Well, they don't have much of a majority. They've got a slim majority, but they were meant to have in the midterms a huge majority. Didn't transpire that way, so they are struggling.
Yeah, they've got 222 and it's there's 435 seats. Unfortunately, Rishi didn't teach me maths when I was aged 8.
No, that's what you need to read.
I'm not sure if
Roger, what does this all mean for Trump? Because, I mean, you know, people thought that he had the GOP sewn up and that his influence meant that he will be the candidate. But more and more, I'm starting to think Ron DeSantis is probably the way they're going to go.
I think the sand is shifting from under his feet, and his inability to control the party is significant. The party's tearing itself apart, of course, hence the suggestion of a compromise candidate, which could split, conceivably, both parties, actually, because the Democrats themselves have got their own problems, after all.
Hugely. Well, a lot of Democrats don't want Biden to run again, but he is.
No.
That's happening now, because particularly after the success in the midterms.
Because there's no one else.
And
there's no one on the cab rank to replace him.
But
the
can you
field
imagine,
of talent is frightfully thin.
But Biden against DeSantis, I can't imagine that. I mean, that's a massacre.
Yes, you would have thought so.
Yeah, certainly as an MMA match.
Well, that's what I would... That's how they should settle it. Trial by combat. Game of Thrones style.
We're about 3 years away from that, so...
Well, you know, maybe that's the way to go. Anyway, right, we're halfway through the show, but there's plenty more gas in the tank with COVID grants for ISIS coming up, a statue being defaced, but this time by the right, and the UK has become tropical. See you in 2 minutes.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
As a guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Welcome back to Headliners, your first look at Friday's news stories. Let's get straight into it with this story from Friday's Guardian. And Leo, would you let this man near your hair? Sorry, Roger.
Yeah, I probably would. I mean, he might cut hair really well. It's just where the money goes. So a barber has been sentenced to 12 years in prison after sending thousands of pounds from taxpayer-funded coronavirus grants to the terrorist group Islamic State in Syria. I mean, you can really get a better example of how inept and useless government is than this. So you pay your taxes, the government spaffs it out willy-nilly to anybody who can fill in a form with false details, and then actual terrorists who we've allowed into the country then send it to their terrorist mates in Syria to kill us. It's like, why don't we just like shorten the process by burning all our money in the shower while shooting ourselves?
Organised crime benefited hugely from the bounce back loans as well, because of course, I mean, you can understand the panic involved because they didn't want people destitute when the first lockdowns came around. So they splurged out money without actually monitoring where it was going.
Yeah.
Billions have been lost to organised crime and indeed maverick terrorist sympathisers like this. It's horrendous. And this all comes back to Rishi Sunak, by the way.
Yeah.
Does it? Why? At the time. Yeah.
Okay.
He has to take responsibility for this. And you can understand the panic at the beginning, but they should then, of course, have worked really hard to make sure that this money wasn't being simply wasted.
But there's a limit to how much monitoring can they do? I mean, how responsible can they be for what these people do with the money? I mean,
well, they could not give it out in the first place.
Well,
maybe if people didn't,
require auditors.
If people who worked,
checks and balances,
and if people who worked didn't pay as much tax, then they'd have the money, and you wouldn't have to give it back to them. I mean, it seems just so obvious. Lower taxes, then you don't need to give people money back in some weird, people free stuff from the government. It's like, where do you think that stuff came from?
Yeah,
it's mental.
Rather socialist side.
Also, this guy he's not just a terrorist, a funder of terrorism. He's a former pub landlord who raped an 18-year-old in his pub in Wood Green, and he committed this terrorism offence just months after he got out for that.
Right. Okay.
So yeah,
this is grim stuff.
He's probably got a Guardian column now.
Let's move on to the Times now. And Roger, we thought we had controversy around our statues, but the French have taken it to a whole new level.
Well, this is a puzzling manifestation of the culture wars in France, and I can't honestly get to the bottom of this, but this is a statue of Victor Hugo, who was white Caucasian, as far as I understand it, sculpted in 2003 by, and I might pronounce this incorrectly, Ousmane Sow, the late
this is a
Senegalese sculptor.
Yeah.
She was described as the African Auguste Rodin. It's a sculpture of Hugo, which has now apparently been restored and made to look a lot blacker racially.
So this is the image of the statue of Victor Hugo there, and my understanding is that this was the statue created in 2003, and then it was restored and colorized, I suppose. And there you have it. And people pointed out that Victor Hugo wasn't black, but apparently what had happened is the artist hadn't actually painted him or intended this. It was that the council were described here as very woke and were erring on the side of caution, and they made him black.
So they did what Netflix do, and they just created something and just replaced everybody with black people to try and look good.
But there's an added dimension to this story, which is now, of course, that restored statue has been vandalised by white nationalists.
Which is frightening, because it's incited a reaction from a genuinely unpleasant, specifically French underbelly.
Yes.
And this is something I don't think we have in this country. We tend to beat ourselves up about race relations in this country, but in many ways they're far superior to how they are in the rest of
Europe. A lot more
Europe.
racism in France.
France particularly is frightening.
But they also, this is why Charlie Hebdo is continually attacking racists, because they have a real problem with that out there. But you have, they put, whoever this vandal was, put white paint over the black face of Victor Hugo and put a sign saying white power or something like that. So, and that's what the story's about. What a strange culture war story this is. Very complicated.
Yes, I mean, it's very, very interesting. I mean, I think maybe some of the emotions that are being inflamed on the far right, maybe we could dampen some of those emotions by not desecrating their culture. I don't know. I mean, this is the equivalent of showing a picture of Muhammad to a far right.
But surely the people responsible are the people who vandalised the statue. I mean, we can't say we were goaded into doing it.
No, I'm not saying they're goaded, but they kind of were goaded. I mean, they're having their culture erased.
And we have historically made a habit of figuring Jesus, for instance, as being a bit more white than perhaps.
Yeah, but Victor Hugo was white. I mean, there's a bust of him by Rodin, actually, in the Guernsey Museum. It's a black bust. But he's not trying to say he was black. It's just that's the material he used to sculpt it.
Well, yeah, and this statue was black.
Exactly.
I don't know why they couldn't just leave it as the metal and not try and do it with felt tips.
Was it the work of the artist herself to colour it in any way? I mean,
this is what is unclear from the article. My understanding from the article is that it wasn't colorised initially, or maybe it wasn't. It just degraded very, very quickly.
Perhaps.
They don't say. So the Times need to be a bit more detailed about their reporting.
If it was done gratuitously after the artist's death, then that's just absurd.
I mean, either way, the vandalism is unforgivable. We're going to move on now to the next story. This is the Times again. And Leo, it seems that someone can finally read your handwriting.
Yeah, this is a much nicer story. So a Stone Age code has been cracked by an amateur archaeologist. He's called Ben Bacon, which is a fantastic name. He's a furniture restorer.
Sounds like a Viz character, doesn't it?
Ben Bacon.
So he did this analysis of these 25,000-year-old cave paintings.
Yes.
They have all these symbols. There's lines, there's dots, there's a Y shape. And he worked out there's a calendar based on the lunar cycle. The year starts with spring.
There's the image there.
Dots and lines stand for lunar months.
Right.
So a picture of a mammoth, that's not the mammoth. A picture of a mammoth followed by 5 marks indicates that the mammoth breeding season took place 5 lunar months after the start of spring.
Wow.
And the Y shape is used to show what time of year a species gives birth.
I mean, this is incredible detective work to sort of crack this ancient code.
Yeah,
it's
25,000 years.
And it makes you completely rethink the culture of the time, of course, as
Yeah.
well, because this wasn't superstitious nonsense or even an attempt at art. It was quite scientific.
Yeah. Although we don't know if those bison and mammoths were originally drawn with brown charcoal. They could have been drawn with white. And somebody's come in.
They've come and modified it.
Yeah.
Yes. Culture war, can't escape it, can you? Anyway, we're going to move on now to Friday's Telegraph, Roger, and it might be time to buy some sun cream.
Wow, the UK's average annual temperature has topped 10 degrees centigrade for the first time. Last year was the warmest year on record, which is one of, 14 record warmest years since the turn of the millennium.
They always say it's the warmest year on record. Every year
it happens a lot,
just
but
really
maybe
normal
because it's happening more and more. I mean, the evidence is, I think, fairly unarguable and irrefutable. And quite concerning, I suppose.
Well, what does it mean for us? I mean, does it mean that we're on the verge of climate catastrophe?
Well, that's what, of course,
wait a minute.
Catastrophists would like you to believe.
And Leo's going to come in now and challenge that.
I challenge it.
The UK's average annual temperature tops 10 degrees centigrade for the first time. And I think we can deal with 10 degrees centigrade.
But it's the trajectory. It's where it's going.
Yeah. Oh, so it's going to go to 11 degrees centigrade.
And then where does that go? I know maths well enough to know that it ends up at 50, 60 and 80.
And it's not just temperature, because, of course, this year we had a record drought and we've had a weird winter as well.
I call it, a record period of nice weather. It didn't rain.
Well, it's not so easy for growing crops. I mean, these things do have an impact.
Well, actually, the increase in carbon dioxide in the atmosphere has led to a greening of many parts of the earth.
Of course, the plants thrive on carbon
dioxide. Well, I mean, the English wine industry, I've been to a vineyard recently, and they're saying this has only happened because of climate change.
Yeah.
So maybe there's...
Thank God for climate change.
Science is in its infancy, and there will be, of course, positive benefits as well as
right up until the apocalypse.
Advantages.
It'll be really great till the apocalypse.
Most importantly, though, we will adapt, and I suspect as well that science will provide the answer. Once we crack nuclear fusion, then we can power carbon stripping technology, which will solve the whole problem.
And the real threat comes from governments trying to solve climate change
without understanding.
Trying to meddle. So they're going to raise the price of energy. They're going to raise the price of food, which is going to be disastrous for the poorest in society.
It's always the poor. It is always the poor that get affected. It's not the posh, just stop oil people gluing themselves to Rodin sculptures. You know, they'll be all right anyway. They've got, you know, Nanny and the au pair and everything. Anyway, we're going to finish this section with a story in The Eye about why you should disregard everything we've just talked about.
So this has a story that's 5 things you can do to stop getting tricked by bad science writing in 2023. This is from the esteemed, peer-reviewed scientific publication, The Eye. So it says, take breakthroughs. Number 1 should be don't read The Eye. But it says, take breakthroughs with a pinch of salt. Yeah, apparently journalists sometimes use hyperbole and try and make a story seem more attractive and alarming than it
I think journalists should avoid cliches such as pinch of salt, personally. That would be my tip.
Yeah, and also a pinch of salt is going to be bad for you. So that's, that goes against the health. It also says trust no one. So, you know, the headlines, you know, don't state the facts. facts. And then it says, no, seriously, trust no one. Apparently journalists fake some of the results. Avoid contrarianism. I disagree. I think you should totally go for contrarianism, unless you like going for contrarianism, in which case you shouldn't. And it also says, be optimistic. So apparently things are, there's a lot of progress being made around dementia, cancer.
This sounds like a useless article, doesn't it?
It's completely, it's waffle. It's waffle. Nobody was in this week. It's New Year.
The important thing at the bottom of that article is that journalists willfully and lazily just copy out press releases from any eccentric who hasn't had their stuff previously peer-reviewed. It's the journalists who aren't in Fleet Street anymore, are they? They're behind their consoles just lazily, sloppily cutting and pasting nonsense, which turns out to have no basis in peer-reviewed scientific fact.
Right, well, let's catch a break to catch our breath after that and gear ourselves up for the final section. We have got, in this final section coming up, racist beauty products, work-shy 5-year-olds, and the cat that could give Jeff Bezos a run for his money. See you shortly.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
And welcome back to the final part of Headliners, your first look at Friday's newspapers. And Roger, finally, the Mail has given us a story you can relate to.
This is the story of an influencer who has been accused of racism for using and recommending black hair oil, or oil which is specifically targeted at black women. And it's been suggested by someone who doesn't even give her real name on Twitter that this is some form of cultural appropriation. I mean, the whole story seems to be engendered by people mistaking Twitter for the real world.
Well, that's a common problem. Yes, it is a common problem, and Donald Trump had that problem himself.
Absolutely. I understand the temptation, but it's still nonsense.
I mean, Leo, it does seem like... But is this a cancellation? I mean, the influencer has deleted the video under pressure.
Yeah, she deleted the video. I think she should have left it up because she wasn't doing anything wrong. I think she's obviously got the kind of hair that benefits from this oil, or she wouldn't be using it. So there's no problem with her using the oil.
There are loads of products like this.
She was supporting a black business by buying the oil. So surely she should be encouraged to do that. And it just seems people on social media are looking for something to get upset.
Clearly.
Yes, well, people weaponising outrage. That's what it's about, isn't it, really? And gaining brownie points and kudos by being outraged on behalf of other people, usually.
It's just the same old story, isn't it?
Yes.
So we'll move on to something new.
Sorry to dismiss that.
Well, fair enough. The Guardian now. And Leo, what career advice would you give to a 5-year-old? Become a chimney sweep?
Well, yeah, exactly. So primary school pupils as young as 5 and 6 are to be the target of a new careers programme in England, encouraging them to think about future jobs early, according to this is what the government's announced. So, I mean, they did start working very young in the old days.
They did.
The days of Oliver
Little
Twist.
Boy Blue.
Yeah.
They used to send them out to the fields as soon as they were able to walk about, but they would still have naps, hence the whole story.
And the factories, of course, because they could get into the machines.
Nimble fingers in China.
And you mentioned the chimney sweeps.
And the chimney sweeps, of course. Yes, William Blake
get up the
had a few things
chimneys
to say about that. But
so that's the phrase, light a fire at somebody's feet. That's talking about if the child's cleaning the chimney too slow.
I don't think anyone is seriously suggesting child labour at this point.
No, well, they're going to wait until they're older. But
So
for me, it's still the same person.
Is that child labour?
If you wait a bit,
if you were a child once,
I think it is.
Does that count?
I think it counts, and I mean, it makes a change from sending drag queens into the schools.
That's a good point.
Teach them about.
Well, it's about influencing in the same way, arguably, and I don't think there's much to really fret about this, because actually it's introducing young children, often in disadvantaged areas where there isn't a culture of employment and work, to the idea of work.
Yeah, but you never know what you want to be, do you, Roger, at that age? I mean, look, when I was 18, I didn't know what I wanted to be. And, the careers advisor was saying, what do you want to do? And they're just throwing jobs at you, like, why don't you work here? Why don't you do this?
And the world of work would have changed 2 decades later anyway, wouldn't it?
But also, you don't know how to get jobs and what jobs are when you're, like, I worked in a petrol station, and then my mate was like, why don't you temp in an office? And I was like, how'd you do that? And he showed me how to do it. Then I temped in an office. It was so much better than working in a petrol station, although I didn't get free pornography and Mars bars. But I had more money, so I could buy them.
Right. So you think it's a good idea to let kids...
It's a great idea, yeah.
OK, maybe not that career path particularly. But anyway, we're going to take a look now at Friday's Mirror. And Roger, will you be downloading this app?
Oh, heavens. It's a new dating app. I've heard of these things from millennials endlessly talking about them. This is a new dating app called Tame, which seems outrageously bland and apparently doesn't allow you to ghost and swipe.
You're going to have to define ghost for some of our
I don't know
viewers.
what these things mean. I'm just reading from the piece of paper.
Ghosting is where you don't get back to someone. So someone sends you messages and you just blank them entirely.
Yeah.
You know, but you can't enforce that on a dating app,
what
can you?
what happens if you're being stalked? Are you going to be forced to have a conversation with your stalker?
This is apparently an app which insists that you talk to only one person at a time, and you have to finish the conversation and explain why you're finishing the conversation before moving on to someone else.
That sounds really... sounds really sexy. What a turn on.
For crying out loud.
What a turn on, having your conversation policed.
I'd quite enjoy that.
Really?
I'd just be like, listen, it's the app. I have to do this character assassination on you and tell you all the reasons.
This is like having a chaperone saying, sit together and let's discuss your differences and why this is potentially not working out. It's an awful idea.
And the one thing about the good thing about the online world is that this will fail because it's so horrendous. No one will buy the app. No one will buy into it.
Also, Roger, I thought the whole point of these apps was that it sort of supersedes the need for conversation in sexual liaisons. Isn't that the point?
Just a picture which you swipe.
Right, exactly.
And all the terms like ghosting and stuff like that they're quite problematic to me. Sometimes you don't want to talk to someone, so you stop talking to them.
Yes.
And it's quite nice being ghosted as well, because you don't need to deal with any like awkward situations. So I don't know why anybody would want to get rid of that.
Utterly bizarre. The Mail next, and Leo, hopefully this cat will leave everything in their will to a human shelter.
So yeah, Taylor Swift's cat, Olivia Benson, is the world's 3rd richest pet, worth a staggering $97 million.
Wow.
I can't believe she called her cat Olivia Benson. That's not a cat's name. Cats have got names like Tiddles and Mrs. Piggywinkle.
I like having a second name for a cat.
Olivia Benson, that just sounds like a person. This might be a person in a suit. But yeah, I don't know how it's so rich. Instagram or something, I don't know.
Cats make a lot of money on Instagram.
Well, it's actually funding a child army in the Gambia. No, it's not. I'm trying to make the story more interesting.
Well, there's the
Basically,
cat.
Taylor Swift has got a cat.
Yeah.
It's not even a good cat. Why don't people, instead of getting cats, why do they get gerbils? 97 million quid for a cat. You can get 2 gerbils for £15 from Pets at Home, and they're much nicer animals.
This article has a pet rich list, which lists the top 10 richest pets in the world, all of whom are making more money than we will ever dream of.
I know. No cat needs to be that rich. I think it's disgusting. Anyway, we're going to move on to this final story, and this one is in the Metro, Roger, with the news that Brooklyn Beckham is to cooking what his mum is to singing.
This is, once again, all about online response to a Brooklyn Beckham Michelin-style Sunday beef dinner tutorial.
OK, now he's become like a cooking influencer, is that right? Because I saw him do a sort of gin and tonic recipe at Christmas, and it was basically mixed gin with tonic. that was effectively it. Did very well.
Did it work?
Yeah, I tried. It was particularly. It was a nice gin and tonic. You know?
Good luck to him if he can monetise that.
Well, yeah.
I have respect for him.
Not that he needs to monetise everything.
Well, exactly. You don't need to
what's this
monetise
one
much when
particularly?
you. Well, it's controversial because apparently the beef was a little undercooked.
Right.
And it involved a lot of butter. But if you're going to eat beef and butter anyway,
but isn't that quite normal? That's like people often want their meat bleeding, don't they?
A high-end restaurant.
Yes.
I blame Salt Bae for this. He made everybody think. Salt Bae's the guy who drizzles the salt off his wears glasses.
Oh, the chef who invaded the pitch.
Yeah.
Okay, that guy.
And drizzled salt on the World Cup. So he's made everybody think they can be a cool superstar, rock star person by cooking meat quite badly.
But then at least he's not releasing singles and trying to go in his mother's footsteps.
Is Brooklyn Beckham releasing a single?
No, he's not. I'm saying glad he's not.
Right.
That would be
It's
bad.
a curse to be a child of the super rich. I do have some sympathy because what on earth do you do?
Yeah. No, that's a fair point. Well, clearly you encourage people to eat raw meat, don't you?
We've come a long way since Delia, that's for sure.
But is he just not a talented one? You know how both of his parents are talented in one way or another.
Yeah.
His father was apparently like a genius on the football pitch. Is that right?
Only on the football pitch, though.
Oh no, definitely. No, he doesn't have great intellectual heft, and clearly his son hasn't inherited whatever intellectual.
But having the idea of queuing up to see the Queen lying in state, wow, that's a publicity stroke of genius.
Yeah.
Okay, well, unfortunately that's all we've got time for, but I'd like to thank my guests Leo Kearse and Roger Monkhouse. Please do join me tomorrow on Headliners at 11 o'clock, and that's going to be with Nick Dixon and Daniel O'Reilly, also known as Dapper Laughs. And remember that Headliners is repeated at 1 a.m. and 5 a.m, which if you're up and watching right now, stay tuned for The Breakfast Show, which is just after the break.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late-night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday at 6